Okay, so I show it's recording, and let me just confirm that you can see my screen here. I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you. Can everyone see that?
Looks good to me.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting. And this is, as I mentioned before, being recorded. So you'll be able, everyone that's here right now will be able to refer back to it as you take minutes and work on this assignment. And then the majority of you that are in the classes are not here right now. This is the recording that you'll be watching and taking minutes from. So as we get started with our meeting, can I get a volunteer to give a prayer?
I can give the prayer.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the opportunity we have to meet here together as students to discuss our class and how we might progress and do better. We're grateful for the gospel of Jesus Christ and for the wonderful blessing that it is in our lives and for these resources that are made available to us. Please help us to be able to do the best we can to utilize these blessings in our lives, that we might be able to move ourselves forward. And we ask and pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So I wanted to just share a PowerPoint that I prepared, and I wanted to use this meeting as an opportunity. As you know, it's part of your assignment this week to learn how to take minutes for a meeting or to improve those skills if you've already done this before. But I also want this to be a meeting where I'm able to share some advice and talk about the progress that we're making in class, so that it's kind of a beneficial meeting for that reason as well. So you'll see on the PowerPoint homepage here, I've got a note here that says, "I love taking minutes." And I'm not sure how much we would agree with that statement. I posted a picture here of my boys. My oldest here looks pretty bored. And this was at a little arcade place, and you put a quarter in the machine and the helicopter goes a few feet above the ground, and the kids love it. And but my kids weren't loving it. And my 2-year-old is looking terrified or looking like he's about to throw a tantrum. They actually really do love this when they're alone, but I tried to put them together and I thought it would be fun, and they weren't loving it. So this might be how you feel about taking minutes. You might want to throw a tantrum or just not be interested at all, or you might just be really bored. But that being said, taking minutes is a really important concept and a really important principle, and I can speak to that from my own experience. There's even some meetings that I go to where there isn't someone taking minutes, and I notice the lack of that. I wish that there were minutes, and most meetings have minutes, but I've just noticed in some of the meetings I've attended in my administrative full-time job, when minutes aren't taken and you need to go back to find out what decision was made or how it applies. And it isn't even necessarily just for those people that don't attend the meeting, though that is a really good purpose of the meeting, but of taking minutes. But another great purpose is that you can reflect back, depending on what your responsibility or your role is in an organization, it can be really helpful to go back and look at the decisions that we made, and then you read those minutes at your next meeting so that you have kind of a return and report and organization. So that's my little spiel on why taking minutes is really important, even though it may not be the most fun thing to all of us. And so the next principle I'd like to go over with you is recognizing your progress in class so far. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Elder Scott. And I'll just go ahead and read this to you. If you have determined to live righteously, don't become discouraged. Life may seem difficult now, but hold on tightly to that iron rod of truth. You are making better progress than you realize. And that's by Elder Richard G. Scott. And I really love that quote. And I put this picture next to it of some hikers, and they've hiked a while and they're looking back to see the progress that they made. And one of my favorite recreational activities is to go for hikes. And this is one of my favorite parts of the hike is you're going one step at a time, and you're being challenged, and you don't even maybe realize the progress that you're making. And then you take a minute, you turn around and you look down, and you realize, wow, I've gone a lot further than I thought. And for me, that's a motivating factor. It motivates me to keep climbing, to keep working. And I just want all of you to realize that you're probably making a lot more progress than you think and then you realize in class. And hopefully you do realize some of that progress. If you don't, I encourage you to take a step back and maybe take some time to reflect and look back at your work during the first few weeks of the semester. It's progress is kind of deceiving, I think, sometimes because it's so gradual and it kind of sneaks up on you. But I encourage you to look back and realize that you are making great progress. And that is one of my favorite things about being an online instructor is to see that progress that you're making and to help you to play a role in helping you make that progress. So keep up the good work and keep making progress one day at a time, 1 week at a time. And the rest of our meeting, I'm going to devote towards helping you to continually make further progress, knowing what's ahead this week and the coming weeks. I want to share some tips and some insights that I have found to be very helpful to your success and to your continued growth, not just for getting a good grade in class, which when push comes to shove, I realize that's what a lot of us are wanting. And it's important, but I would say even more important that your progress in your writing skills that you'll be able to take out into the world will improve as well. And so with that, I wanted to share this quick quote and elaborate and show how it applies to our class from Abraham Lincoln. And he said, "If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe." And it's human nature and human tendency, at least this is how I am, and I think a lot of people are this way, that when you have a task and you know you only have a certain amount of time to finish it, you want to just jump in and get to work. You don't have time to stop and read the instructions or do those things that would sharpen the axe. And I think of, I talk about this a lot, and I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of. I think of just a random example of putting together a toy car for my kids that they can get in and ride. And I'm excited and they're excited, and I think I can just do it without reading the instructions. And when I don't read the instructions, not only do I not learn, but it actually takes longer, takes more effort because I didn't take the time up front. And that's exactly what this principle is, he would even spend 4 hours of his 6 hours to sharpen the axe. And so I want to talk a little bit about how I see that being applied in our class and what that means. A lot of these things I feel like the majority of you are doing a very good job on. And this has been important up to this point in this class. It will continue to be very important in our assignments in the coming weeks, that we take the time to really understand the expectations of the assignments before you begin work. And so here are some items, and these are, there would be more as well, but these are some of the key ones that I wanted to share with you today. So the first one, briefcase instructions. So there is a lot of great material in the briefcase and the presentation as well. And just taking the extra time to go through and read that. Sometimes we think we might be able to slip by and just read the headings and get a general idea, but taking the extra time to read through those instructions, I've noticed a significant correlation towards my most successful students doing that and my least successful students not doing that. Weekly advice. So every week I post an announcement, and it's my advice for that week. And I base that off of previous semesters. So you're kind of benefiting even more so than previous semesters, because I look at my grading and what students tend to struggle the most and little things that they miss. And I put that in the advice. Grading rubrics are also very important, and we're going to actually look at a sample rubric, and I'm going to kind of walk you through that in our next slide. Questions and conversations board. So this is a really valuable tool that sometimes you might even email me with a question, and I might even direct you to the questions and conversations board, and I'll be proactive and look to answer it there. And that isn't because I don't want to respond to your email. A lot of times emails to me are appropriate, and that's the way that I'll communicate with you. But sometimes there's a question that I'm pretty confident that other students in the class would have as well. And so I'll direct it there, because that's a great tool that you can teach one another. And I try and be active in there as well, but you don't have to wait for me. If you know an answer, we can demonstrate the learning model and teach one another. And I've seen that this semester, and I've really, I've been encouraged to see the active participation there. So I encourage you to continue doing that. Emails as well, as I mentioned. So again, there's definitely times where it's more appropriate to just email me directly, and I try to be as quick as I can in responding to those emails. One thing to kind of just show an example of where not reading the instructions will actually take you longer in the long run is if you email me with a question and I respond within 24 hours, and I usually try and respond as soon as possible, like I said, but it's going to be, if it's a simple question that's answered in the instructions, it could take you maybe 1 or 2 minutes to go to the briefcase and find the answer there. And so the next one, peer reviews. So look to learn from each other. And I encouraged earlier this semester to choose a different person, choose different people, and use variety in who you're peer reviewing, because those are more talents and different perspectives that you can share. Instructor feedback. So every assignment that you submit, I try and give detailed feedback on that particular assignment, but also I look for principles that would apply to the next week's assignment, so that you can look to apply that feedback and improve in your writing. And then proofreading. I've seen some papers where the writing is super polished and clean. I can just tell that the person who wrote that assignment has a high skill level, but then there's a few errors missed that aren't polished and clean. And I know that if that person read that more closely and did proofreading, they would have caught something like that. So just those small and simple things will generate big results. And here is the rubric for the minutes taking assignment. And so I'll just go over this real quickly. So purpose and context. The opening statement includes time, date, venue, attendees, and the name of the organization. So just a brief statement at the beginning of your minutes to include that. Include outcomes. So what happened at the meeting? What were the outcomes? Include a justification at the beginning. And occasionally we'll see a lot of points left on the table or missed because the justification wasn't included. And I hope that you're benefiting from the justification by not just going through the motions, but you're seeing how it helps. And I don't want the justification just to be something that is kind of a pain for you to do because the course designers put it in there and you're required to do it and you kind of just go through the motions. But I want to see you benefit from that, because a big thing that we stress a lot in this class, and I'll continue to stress, is knowing your audience. And when you put that justification in place, it helps you to approach the assignments more purposely and writing, and helps you write for a specific audience. The audience and tone is a professional tone. And we wanted to see that reflected not just in the lack of grammar mistakes and errors, but also just in the nature of how your writing comes across to the audience. And then the next section, genre, format, and length, organized with bulleted headings according to agenda, recorded as specific, definite, and concrete statements, not as full transcripts. So I wouldn't expect anybody's minutes to be covering word for word what I'm saying right now. And so we would want it to be more of a summary. In fact, you look in the instructions on the briefcase, there is a limit of 1 page in 12-point font. And so it wouldn't be possible to cover that all. And we don't want that. We want, well, the purpose should be somebody can read these minutes and understand what took place at the meeting, the main points, the main takeaways, without reading every word that was spoken. And then editing free of spelling, punctuation, and grammar errors. And so that, in a nutshell, is what we're expecting from this assignment. And you see the grading there. And one thing I don't overly like about the way that this rubric comes across is that if you were to do average on all of these areas, you would be performing poorly. You would be below a C. And so I don't really look at it that literally. I look for what you're performing very well at, and I don't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily say an 8 out of 12 is average, in my opinion. And so I'm looking at this grading rubric from a similar perspective. All the items here are still applicable, but my grading is a little bit different than that. And so lastly, I just wanted to, this is a pretty short meeting. That's everything I wanted to go over, but I did want to take some time, and even just 1 or 2 minutes. As you see these questions here, I'd love to get your feedback on your experience so far in the course, and feel free to chime in on either one of these bullet points. What has been the most challenging part of our class so far, and what has been the most rewarding part of our class so far? And so I'll turn a little bit of time over to you for that right now.
Okay, do you want us to raise our hand, or can we just type in?
You're fine, yeah.
Okay. I really struggled with the white paper last week. I feel like it was so much information. It was really new of a writing concept for me. And I felt like, while there were great resources to explain starting, I didn't understand what it was supposed to look like for the finished. So even after I turned it in, I was like, did I do that right? What does this look like? I don't know. That was my biggest challenge this semester so far.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And you weren't the only one. I think that assignment is challenging for a lot of students, and that's kind of branching out more. We'll see more assignments like this where it isn't quite clear, and it would be a lot easier, I know, if I were to provide a template or a sample. And that's specifically, as an instructor, I'm more of a facilitator. I'm facilitating the material that's already been designed and approved by content experts in the business department. And they specifically wanted it that way because if we share a template of a white paper or share a template of a resume, for example, then the tendency is to follow that template and not think outside of the box as much. And depending on the company that you chose and the way that you're going to write it and your audience, it might be a differently designed template than somebody else. And so it's by design. I know that doesn't help because believe me, I've been a student recently enough that I understand the frustration, and I've felt the same way before. So where I try and help out as much as I can is, through email, through the question and discussion board. I want to help you be successful as I can. And sometimes, in my opinion, some of the instructions aren't as clear as they could be, and that's where I will jump in and clarify. But there are a lot of areas where it's on purpose vague, that it's kind of leaving it up to you, because we want you to learn and grow and have that experience and approach it the way that you feel is best. So it's within the parameters of the briefcase, but it's also not overly specific, and I definitely realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with one of the assignments, the history one. I mean, I interpreted it the way I thought the assignment said I was supposed to, but then I was obviously completely way out, because that's probably, grading wise so far, that's the worst grade I've had on any single assignment, because I completely misinterpreted. I mean, I read the briefcase, interpreted it what I thought it wanted, and boy was I wrong, and I didn't know that until it was graded, and then I'm kind of stuck.
Anything else as far as the challenging part?
Well, sometimes I have a terrible time of writing, and it's totally overwhelming, and sometimes I need more help. How could I get more help?
There are, if you go into the syllabus, you'll see opportunities for helping through the tutoring center that you can get help on, and it really would vary depending on what specifically you're struggling with, but that is a resource that's available. And then also the questions and conversations board, I think, is a really valuable tool. I've seen a lot of experiences where there's confusion about how to approach an assignment, and somebody else will jump in, and then a lot of times I'll jump in and say, I completely agree with this. This is a perfect example of how someone might approach this assignment.
May I make a comment?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. I have reached out to other business majors that I know just in my ward or in my friendship circle, and they have been huge resources for this as far as getting peer-to-peer reviews and even asking what in the world a white paper was. I had about 3 people researching it for me because the instructions were very vague last week. But just reaching out in your social circles, I found has been very helpful for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Dad.
Thank you.
Daddy?
Yeah.
Just say it.
How about would anyone like to share something that they've found rewarding in class so far?
I think the peer reviews have been so helpful. Every week I have got a couple people that have given me some great, even after proofreading my own work, like you just miss little things, and it's so great to see other people that are trying to write the same thing you are, coming from the same experiences that kind of you are, that go in and see like, oh, you must not have read this. Because sometimes if I show it to someone outside of the class, yes, they can help me, but they don't understand always like my audience or exactly how the assignment is. So I have really appreciated the peer reviews on our discussion boards. That has been really helpful for me.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, I don't want to keep you guys any longer than we need to. Thank you so much for attending the meeting today. And I look forward to your assignments and your work this week. And again, continue to reach out to those resources, myself included. I want to help you be as successful as you can. And I've really enjoyed seeing your progress this week. I'll just reiterate what we talked about at the beginning, that you are making great progress, and I think you're making more progress than you realize. And so keep up the good work, and we'll see you in class. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yep.